Hey guys, how's it going? Hope you're doing well. My name is Crown, and today I'm going to read you some very interesting stories that I hope that you're gonna love. And now, without further ado, let's go!
This story takes me back a few years to a time when I was a photographer at a major theme park. I've had my fair share of encounters with entitled people, the Karens and Brads of the world. But there was this one incident that stood out so much that I had to call security. Let me set the scene. It was a bright afternoon and I was working with one of the park characters. A family of 3 approached us, mom, dad, and their little boy, Malcolm, who I'd say was about 5 years old. Something unique about Malcolm was that he was strapped to a harness attached to his mom's waist. It looked like those harnesses joggers use, especially designed for keeping someone close. Before we began the photo session, Malcolm's dad pulled both me and a character attendant aside. He explained that Malcolm was a non-verbal autistic child and the camera flashes could overstimulate him. This wasn't an unusual request for me, so I quickly adjusted my camera setting to avoid using the flash. I appreciated the heads up. Malcolm's turn came, and let me tell you, he was an absolute sweetheart. He was so excited to show us his book filled with pictures of his favorite dinosaurs. When their session ended and they left, we all felt a bit sad to see him go. A few hours later, I was in a backstage area where guests aren't allowed, heading for my break. Out of nowhere, Malcolm came barreling into me, and mind you, I am not a small guy, nearly 6 feet tall and about 250 pounds, but he nearly knocked me over. He was screaming and crying, clearly distressed. Thankfully, my manager Oscar was nearby, and I flagged him down, and we immediately called security. We managed to take Malcolm to a cooler, air-conditioned area. It was a scorching 95 degrees outside. To calm him down, I started showing him pictures of dinosaurs on my phone, and slowly he started to relax, and soon enough, he was like my little buddy. About 10 minutes later, his parents, looking incredibly worried and tearful, arrived. And that's when we got the full story of what had happened. Enter Karen. While Malcolm's family was getting ice cream, Karen approached them. The conversation went something like this. Why is he harnessed? Mom, trying to be polite. Oh, he's autistic and tends to bolt if he's not harnessed. Karen, with no hint of understanding. No, he's not. Mom, taken aback. Excuse me? You're just a bad parent. My grandson knows better than to stray from me. And he's about the same age. The mom tried to explain further, but then the dad returned with ice cream, and she turned to help him. And that's when Karen made her move. In just a blink, the harness went slack, and by the time mom looked up, Malcolm and Karen had vanished into the crowd. The park was packed that day, and it's pretty easy to lose sight of someone, especially a running child. But the key thing here is that the park had cameras everywhere. So getting footage of the incident and a description of Karen was easy. Security was alerted and they tracked Karen down. Turns out Karen was belligerent when confronted and even tried to slap a security guard right in front of an Orange County sheriff. Needless to say, she earned herself a court date for assault. As for Malcolm and his family, the park added an extra day to their tickets as an apology. But they had one special request. They wanted to know where I'd be the next day so I could take their pictures. The following day, I gave them the full-on photo shoot treatment. It was honestly the best day of my entire career. Seeing Malcolm's joy and his parents' gratitude made every bit of the chaos totally worth it. Hey there, you won't believe what happened to me just an hour ago. I work at this laundromat, the kind of job where you meet all sorts of people. But today I encountered a pair of women that took me on a wild ride of rudeness and entitlement. So I was out in the parking lot cleaning up some litter when these 2 women walked in. They came from Father Joe Village, a local homeless shelter. People from the shelter get these cards to do a couple of loads of laundry for free, which is great. One woman had 2 cards and her friend had 3. The first sign of trouble was when the first woman, let's call her Karen, demanded that I clean the soap dispenser. It was already clean, but I did it again to keep the peace. As I was doing this, I noticed Karen was overloading the washing machine with soap. When I suggested using less, she snapped at me, telling me to mind my own business. I bit my tongue and moved on to help the other woman, who was way nicer. While I was helping the nicer lady, Karen struck again. She practically bullies her friend out of using the big dryer, forcing her to use the smaller ones. Unbelievable, right? But wait, it gets worse. Karen then demands money from the dryer. I tell her that's not how it works, and she threatens to report us to the shelter supervisor. I shrugged it off and told her to go ahead. Then, as I was bending down to tie my shoe, some quarters fell out of my pocket. Karen lunged for them like a hawk. I demanded she give them back, but she refused, yelling and cursing at me, even calling me a crook. Luckily, my boss showed up at that moment and I explained everything, and she immediately called a supervisor from Father Joe. We told him all about Karen's behavior, and guess what? He wasn't surprised. He knew exactly who she was when I mentioned her name. The other woman, the nice one, apologized for Karen's behavior. She said Karen was rude to everyone and felt entitled to everything. Can you believe that? Father Joe's supervisor told us that Karen would have her privileges suspended. And my boss? Well, she banned Karen from our laundromat for her behavior towards both of us. Turns out the supervisor suspected Karen had stolen the extra laundry cards to avoid paying and scam other laundromats. My boss speculated that Karen might even get kicked out of the shelter for causing issues with others and the staff there. This is a story from the distant past when I was a kid. Early 80s Australia. My family lived in suburban Townsville then. We had a fairly tight-knit community on our street and all generally got along well. Our neighbor on the right side was a lovely old lady, and I have no idea what her name was, but us kids all called her Gran. She was a tough old bird, lived in the bush all her life, and had a real no-nonsense attitude. On our left side was a block of 2 flats with tenants that seemed to come and go all the way. At this particular time, there was a middle-aged woman and her 2 kids. This woman, as I recall, was a bit of a witch and had a real better-than-you attitude. No idea what her name was, but we will refer to her as Karen because, well, it fits. Now, Gran loved her garden and was always working on it. She grew beautiful flowers. Her garden was always kept in perfect condition and was essentially what kept her going in her old age. The local kids were welcome in her garden just as long as we did not make a mess. Karen, on the other hand, loved her dog. It was some poodle crossing and an ugly mutt in my opinion. Unlike the rest of our dogs, it was not allowed to roam the streets and play with the kids, but was kept inside except for the daily walk each morning on a lead. I bet you can see where this is heading. One morning, we heard sounds of an argument coming from Gran's front yard. Apparently, Karen had decided to help herself to some of Gran's flowers while walking the dog. When told off by Gran, she then decided to insult Gran's garden, which was a very bad mistake. So, the two exchanged words before Karen stalked off. We thought that was that until Gran started to find dog poop in her yard every day. Literally every day. As most of our dogs roamed the street, she could not say it was happening deliberately. Just that it was strange that the dogs had avoided the place until now. Then we find out that Karen has changed her routine and was walking her dog at dawn each day. My dad spotted her as he was going to work. And of course, Karen was using the opportunity to have her dog take a dump on Gran's lawn. When Gran found out, she was furious. I was at school at the time, so I did not see it, but Mom recounted the events. Apparently, Gran had taken a garden trowel of dog poop and gone over to Karen's door where she had told Karen that she would drop your face in the next dog poop I see on my lawn. Karen responded with a tirade of abuse and then slammed the door before Gran threw the poop at her. So the stage is set. On to act number 2. The scene? Early Saturday morning. We were woken by screams at daybreak. It sounded like there was a fight happening at Gran's place. All the neighbors rushed out to the most amazing scene ever. In Gran's front yard on a lawn lay Karen face down with Gran perched astride her back. One hand on the back of Karen's neck and the other hand with a firm grip on Karen's hair as she rubbed her face back and forth through a nice fresh dog poop. Karen was screaming bloody murder between gasping for breath and spitting out grass and crap. Gran was shouting, "I warned you. I bloody warned you, you stupid witch." So it turns out that the cunning old girl knew Karen was too stupid to take a warning, so she had got up early to lay in, wait, and then ambushed Karen in the garden. Karen was never the same again, and she moved out in less than a week. The best laugh I think I have ever had. Never mess with the grannies, folks. I, 19 female, live in a university dorm with a roommate, 18 female. This semester we haven't really fought, but she's been continuously frustrating. On multiple occasions she has forgotten her room key and asked me to let her in. This wouldn't be an issue if it wasn't such a common occurrence for her to expect me to run across campus for her or let her in at early hours, all while being very unappreciative whenever I let her in. She could easily go to the residence help desk and get a spare key, as it's less than a block away and open 24/7, but she always chooses not to. She has also on multiple occasions given me no warning before replacing her key, and in the process demagnetizing mine. This is slightly annoying because when I get back from a 3-hour lab, I would like to be able to fix my key before I get to my room and realize I can't open the door. Over the week, she also called me numerous times asking me to search for her wallet and key in her room, even though I had told her and texted her that night that I was at home, hours away from the university. In addition to all of this, it's clear that she hates living in residence and as such is overall just negative to be around. Now this is a part where I might be the jerk. The other night I fell asleep at 2 a.m. after studying for finals. She came home at 5 a.m. and turned on all the lights. This woke me up, but only enough to make my eyes open and look around before I fell back asleep as she left the room. As far as my roommate knew, I was asleep the whole time. A few minutes later, she tried to call me and my phone rang. I looked at my phone and when I saw it was her, I muted her, figuring she was trying to get me to let her back into our room. She tried calling me again and made my phone vibrate and fall onto the floor from my loft to bed. I later found out she tried to call me 4 times. Eventually, she started continuously knocking loudly on a door, and I still didn't get out of bed. After 5 minutes, she started calling my name, and it almost sounded like she was crying in the hall. It's exam season, so quiet hours were in effect, especially strictly. Eventually, someone else let her in, probably the resident assistant on duty or our resident assistant down the hall. When she came back into the room, I pretended to be asleep so she wouldn't know I was ignoring her the whole time. So yeah, I don't know. Reddit, am I the jerk for what I've done that night? And now some comments on the post. Someone saying, I'm a resident assistant myself, and definitely you're not the jerk. I mean hell, sometimes when residents who frequently forget their keys call me at irritating hours, I'll take as long as I need to get there. Sometimes sitting in the hall and waiting for 15-20 minutes will teach them a lesson. You're not the resident assistant. It's not your job to let your roommate in, especially at 5 in the morning during finals week. Besides, she's a damn adult. She's gotta start remembering her key or she's gonna have a rough time as soon as she gets her own place. It sounds like someone, maybe yourself, or a resident assistant or a staff member needs to have a sit-down talk with your roommate about why she keeps forgetting her key. Another commenter adds, not the jerk. Part of college is learning how to handle adult responsibilities, like remembering where your own stuff is. Accidents happen, but this is carelessness. If I misplace my work key into my office, it's considered a security threat and I'm in a big trouble. I'm happy I learned how to manage my stuff when the consequences were much lower. I'm surprised she's been able to get so many new keys. When I was in college, it was like $50 to get a new dorm key. If I remember correctly, it was a cost to get a new one for yourself and you had to replace your roommates. Granted, they were actual keys. Not cards like people have nowadays, but still. I'm pretty against universities charging students out of anything they could, but I know the cost associated with replacing our keys did make us keep track of them. As far as her attitude goes, hopefully she will perk back up after the semester break, assuming you have one. I remember things will get tense with my roommates around finals, but after a few weeks of getting some space, we were usually always excited to come back and see each other again. Dorm life is tough, and while this is super annoying, count your blessings if this is the worst thing she does. I do recommend talking to her if this continues to be a problem. Looking back, a lot of conflict with my roommates could have been handled much better if we would have handled it like adults instead of being passive-aggressive. Good luck. The third commenter goes with, "Not the jerk." Do I think this was the most mature reaction? No, I don't. To be honest, you should have addressed this issue weeks ago, and please stop being her butler. You're not. You are a roommate with your own life, and you don't have to accommodate her every whim. Luckily, you're 19 and she's 18, so both can still learn. So from now on, communicate your boundaries and stick to them. Be firm with her, and when you are in your room, of course you can let her in when you are awake during normal hours. For example, between 8 a.m. and 10 p.m. When you're in your room, of course you can look if you see her key or wallet. Those are all situations where you can help, because you have the possibility to help. Everything else is a firm no, please see the residence help desk. I am not able to help. And keep repeating that until she hears it. Will she learn? That is a question only time can tell. However, you are not responsible for her. You're responsible for yourself, your own boundaries, and communicating those boundaries. When nothing changes, and change takes time, think about the timeline like 2 months, request a new roommate, different room, and so on.
And now we have reached the end of today's stories. Thank you for watching and see you next time.